ended up moving schools, and the only school that I was allowed in was this place called Dilscombs, which was like 15 miles away. And I walked in, and I was 16, and that's the first real decent person I met in my life right there. So I walked into the homeroom, and this woman hears this voice. She tells me today, she's like, I heard this voice. And she's like, I looked up, and it was you. And she looks up at me, and she's like, son, have you ever done any theater? And I'm like, nope, but I want to join the academic team. And she's like, no, theater. I was like, no, academic team. Well, it turned out she ran both, and the deal was if I did theater, that I would do the academic team too. And she became like the surrogate mom to me.
Were you always such a charismatic, outgoing kid? Were you like that when you were from the
No,
get?
I was always like that.
Okay.
Always like that. The weird
Born
thing
with
is,
it, or did you develop it?
Nah, I'm kind of an introvert. I really am. I'm a homebody, man. I don't want to go out and do shit or anything. I want to stay at home. I'm an introvert, but I fight it by being an extrovert, by being overly extroverted. So, if I'm at a conference or work or anything, I'm on. You turn yourself on, and then once that's over, I'm back at the hotel room and I crash. I don't want to go anyplace. Don't want to do anything. Don't want to talk to anybody. That's it. But so I excelled under her name was Carol Combs, and I truly excelled under her. I really did. I mean, I did really well. She was a surrogate mom to me, but we also became really good friends. And the way that happened, school would let out, 2:30, 3 o'clock. My mom wouldn't pick me up until about 7 o'clock. So down off the hill, there was a convenience store there, and I would just go and sit outside the store until mom would come and get me. And one day, Carol, she stops by to get gas, and she looks at me. She's like, son, don't you have a ride?
Right.
And I was like, yeah, they're coming. So about 3 days of that, one day she looks at me. She's like, come on. And she starts driving me home. And she became, like I said, this she became a better mom to me than my mom was, So did really well under her. Had scholarships coming out of high school for theater, things like that. I turned them down because I got a girlfriend, really is what happened, and preacher's daughter. And I turned to my dad, I got this girl. I can't leave her. I got this girl. Well, what happens is I was going to community college there. They brought a new theater. They hired a new theater director for the college. The theater director knew the head of the theater department at San Jose State, which was, I guess they have a pretty decent theater school there. So he talks this guy, his name's Edward Emanuel. He talks this guy into coming down and watching the show. And I was doing a play that Edward Emanuel had written. It was a Civil War play called House Divided. That was the name of it. But Ed comes down, sees the play. As soon as he gets through watching the play, he's like, scholarship, full boat. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, look, man. He's like, you're a big fish in a little pond. We'll make you a big fish in a big pond. I was like, let's do that. So I agreed to do that. And he's like, okay, I'll be back in 2 weeks. So 2 weeks later, he flies back in, drives down to Hazard. I'm outside shooting basketball with some friends of mine. He pulls up. I walk over to his car. I was like, come on, man, I'll introduce you to my mom. He's like, no, man, I got this. I was like, all right. So he walks in the house. He's in there about 15 minutes. Comes back out after 15 minutes, white as a sheet, man, just ghost white. Doesn't say a damn thing to me. Gets in the car, drives off, right? I'm like, what the fuck happened?
Mom did something.
Mom did something. Took me 2 weeks to find out what mom did. He walks in the house, and mom was like that. She could be really, you'd think that everything was fine, then all of a sudden just pop on you. So evidently that's what happened with him. She's talking to him, pulls a knife on him, says, I will kill you, you son of a bitch. You're not going to steal my son. That scares him to death. And that at the same time, that kind of breaks my spirit. I'm like, fuck it. Let's just do what we're going to do, right? So
she didn't want you to leave.
She didn't want me, because me and Denise were basically property to her. And that's one of the things that I never understood. If you grow up in that environment, you don't know that that's not the way things are. All right. But there's a lot of people that when they raise their children, they think their children are then obligated to them to that when they get old they'll help out, or you know, you have to do this, or you have to stay near mom, dad, all this other stuff. So that sense of property.
Does she depend on you guys for anything? Were you guys still like stealing food, and was she like?
It's interesting you'd say that. The weird thing, you know, like Denise, other than that one shoplifting thing, Denise doesn't go off and break the law anymore. Denise becomes a teacher. She's a good parent. She's a good citizen. She's still got that angry type, you know, part of her mentality. But she doesn't break the law anymore. Me, I do, and I embrace it full-fledged. And I was talking to my wife. I've talked to Denise about that as well. And you've got that, what I call that Eastern Kentucky mentality, that the male is expected to do these things. You know, the male is expected to put food on the table. It's the male's job to do this stuff. And I honestly think that part of it was, you know, me coming in and saying, you know, I'll help shield my sister from it. You know, I'll help make sure that Denise doesn't get involved in that. And I was expected to help mom out with this stuff, you know, and that's where Denise doesn't really go into that crime aspect, but I do. You know, I'm helping out with the cars, the homes, the breaking and entering, the drug trafficking, all this other bullshit that's going on. I grew up knowing how to do all that. So what happens is I go, of course, the theater thing goes off to the side. I fake a car accident. I meet this girl, the preacher's daughter. That ends. I dated her for 5 years. She was a hardcore Christian, and I was not. And she kept thinking that I was until she finally figured out, oh, he is certainly not. So she breaks up with me. On the rebound, I meet this other girl, and I'm married to her within 6 months and had nothing in common with her at all. And I was married to her for 9 years. Lied to her every day for those 9 years, every single day, and never had a real conversation with her until the relationship ended. That's what happened. It was crazy. Absolutely crazy.
I'm surprised about the preacher's daughter. Usually, the preacher's daughters are the sexual deviants.
No, she was just a wholesome girl. Okay, she really was, and she kept like when I met her. Her dad was a preacher at the Church of Christ. So the first time I met him, I'm sitting down on the sofa. He comes in. He was a coal miner and then a minister too. He comes in from a day's work, sits down. He looks at me. He's like, "You're dating my daughter." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "So are you a servant of?" What was it? He was like, "Are you a servant of God or are you a servant of Satan?" And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Because you can't be but one."
Whatever you want me to
and
be,
I was like,
sir.
"Well, sir, I think I'm a servant of God." "Are you? Do you go to church?" "No, sir." "Do you believe in the Lord Jesus?" "Well, I have problems with that, sir." "So you're really a servant of Satan." I'm like, okay. And he told me, he's like, "Look," he said, "you're going to date my daughter. You're going to go to church every Sunday and Wednesday." And I looked at him, I was like, "Guess I'm going to church every Sunday and Wednesday." And for 5 years, that's exactly what I did. Every Sunday, every Wednesday night, let's go. And I learned the book, and he was a good man. But he was set in his ways. Christy was an outstanding woman, but she wanted that match of, you know, a Christian mate, and that was not me. It takes her 5 years to figure that out.
You two had very different childhoods.
We did. And, well, yeah, you take a mom that tells you the Satan stuff, and like we were in West Germany at one point, and she has a seance. So you got a mom that does that. Well, we were living in military housing, and in Schwäbisch Hall, Germany. My mom becomes convinced, or at least she says she was convinced, that our apartment had a poltergeist, is what she says. And so she tells all the neighbors in the apartment complex and everything else, and I don't know if they believe it or not, but they at least humored her. She fabricates this, I say fabricates, but she comes up with a story saying that before the apartment complex was there was a train that ran through that area, and the Nazis had the Jews on there, and one time the train stops, 2 Jews escape the train, and this Nazi soldier, SS officer, comes and kills them right on that same spot, and that's where the ghosts come from. She had fabricated this whole story about this stuff. Wow. And she actually gets to the point where she gets the neighbors to come in one night and has a seance. And Mom acts like she was possessed by the ghost of these people.
Good Lord.
So, and like I said, as an adult, you can have fun with that. You know, I can see as the neighbors, they would humor that bullshit. But when you're a kid seeing that, it has a different effect on you.
Yeah.
You know?